All right, so let's take a look at this in some more detail, because I'm joined now by Rachel Ziemba, Senior Analyst at Roubini Global Economics. Thank you so much for coming in to speak to us. And I want to start by asking you about this joint venture that we were hearing about there, ExxonMobil, Chevron, ConocoPhillips and Royal Dutch Shell embarking on this kind of, joint deal to set up equipment to prevent another spill, or at least to be able to respond to one should an accident take place. Is this the right way forward? Are oil companies responding in the right way?
I mean, I think this is one of the steps that needs to be taken. We could ask, should this have been done before? Arguably, yes. I mean, we have to recognize that systems fail. We need to, and I think when we need to find ways for them to fail safely and to have alternatives to deal, and this also, I think, is oil companies realizing that all of them, not just BP, need to repair their reputation, need to build up the tools to deal with emergencies, because things happen. These are high pressure environments in all, in all means of defining that. So we'll see how it goes. But I also think that they're being very conscious of working with the U.S. government, working with other governments. What I would hope to hear is they're not just coming up with a system to make it work in the Gulf of Mexico, deep water, but what about offshore in Africa? What about other systems around the world? Because I think one of the things the Macondo well accident has shown us is that there are a lot of uncertainties, and that there need to be various backups.
So with that in mind, how can we expect the industry to change, or can we expect any changes in the industry as a whole to address the uncertainties that you talk about?
Sure. Well, I think actually we're seeing the financial bottom line that's encouraging them to do this. Better spend, $1 billion collectively than to spend $20 billion in an escrow account, or even more in liabilities. So I think many of these companies, that big oil majors, are rich enough, capital rich enough, that they've self-insured. They're not going to insurance companies for these deals. They're insuring themselves. An insurance company might not have insured this particular project, the project in where the well exploded.
So potentially some far-reaching implications there for the industry as a whole. But I just want to focus on BP itself now, because of course its name will always be associated with the worst oil spill in U.S. history. How difficult is it going to be for the company to recover from this?
I think it's going to be quite difficult, and I think, as I mentioned, both financially but also the reputation within the U.S. I think what's going to make it even more challenging is at the same time that we're dealing with this spill, they're also having to face pressure from the U.S. about what they might or might not have done with the British government in Libya.
There's been a strong political dimension to this story as well.
Certainly.
And what sort of strategy can we then expect the company to adopt when there is a new face at the helm? Of course, a great deal of speculation surrounding Tony Hayward and how much time he might have left. What sort of strategy might we see looking forward to try and turn the company's fortunes around?
Sure. Well, whether or not it's new leadership or not, I think we're going to continue to see some of the moves that we've been seeing, which are working more closely with authorities, trying to build up the safety, but also trying to shore up the base of where BP is most competitive. We've already seen them selling off assets. There's speculation they might sell off more assets, and really, I think, trying to be a leaner company and focus in on their core proposition. But it's going to be a challenge. They've burnt through a certain amount of their cushion, and they're also going to have to. The whole industry is going to have to deal with some of the safety and safety and risk management issues.
All right, so just put this into some context for us then, Rachel. Looking ahead, how can we expect the company to change as a result of Deepwater Horizon?
Sure. Well, I think we'll probably see new risk management processes. I think we'll also see them perhaps interacting slightly differently with their contractors and making it clear sort of who bears responsibility. Because at the end of the day, one of the problems here was what BP did and what all of the subcontractors did. I also think we might see them. We've seen them moving out of some areas, even some of their more lucrative areas in the U.S., selling off some of their oil exposure. Is it going to affect
their contracts in the U.S.?
Who knows? I think that they will be watching very carefully to see the regulatory impacts. But I think at the end of the day, the U.S. authorities are balancing various energy policy issues. They want to make sure that spills like this don't happen, but they also want to make sure that there is ample oil supply. So it's balancing and doing this in a somewhat...
Balancing that with the need for tighter regulation.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, that's something that's not just going to affect BP, it's going to affect the industry. And so to some extent, this joint venture from the other oil companies is trying to make sure that they're not caught off guard when the regulators are making changes.
And interesting that you mentioned some of the other companies involved, and when we speak about the political pressure that BP is subjected to, why have the likes of Transocean and Halliburton not come under that same pressure?
Well, I think at the end of the day, BP was the one that had the contract, that had the block. I also think that BP was the one that had the resource, and BP is also very conscious of its reputation and its status as one of the handful of oil majors. And so at the end of the day, they wanted to do the right thing, and at least not to bicker about who was going to pay the cost. Transocean, even Halliburton are smaller oil service companies, and so I think one of the issues might be is that even those companies might find it harder to reach some of the insurance deals and other things like that.
Well, Rachel Ziemba, Senior Analyst at Roubini Global Economics, thank you so much for your time. We do appreciate it.
Pleasure.